Hi, Jana Kaysen with TelehealthShare. I wanted to share with you some information today on a strategy to help with decreasing the amount of time you're spending prepping, planning, preparing for therapy sessions. We know that can be exhausting and overwhelming and incredibly time consuming. And so I discovered a way early on when I was providing therapy services through telehealth back to back to streamline that process of planning to make it much faster, more effective. So I want to share with you what I ended up creating, and I've made it available for purchase on the TelehealthShare website. And what it is, a PowerPoint to guide your therapy sessions. And each of the slides have some great content but can be fully customized to align with the child's goals. But what I found with the PowerPoint process is that it helps to guide the session. It helps me to know where I left off from the previous session, so decreasing some of the planning time. And as we go through, you'll get a chance to see how it moves some of the planning into the child being able to select activities and gather materials that take some of that prep work off from your side of planning and communicating and assuring that materials are available for the session. So the first thing I like to do when I connect with the child and caregiver is just catch up. How are things going? How was your week? What's been going on today, so I get a feel for how the child's day's been going. If there's any updates, have they implemented some of the strategies that we recommended or I recommended, and how did those go from the previous session? Do we need to make any other adjustments to recommendations or strategies, or do some brainstorming based on some new concerns that might have come up? Then after we've had a chance to catch up and just kind of start the session, get things moving along, we warm up the body. So getting some good vestibular and proprioceptive input. And with this, I like to have the child be able to have a say on some of the activities. It kind of gives them that ability to get excited and feel like they're getting to have a choice in what they're doing. So I'll usually let them pick two, and I'll tell them to be sure to pick a hard one because they know which ones are really tough for them and might choose to avoid those. So I usually will try to coax them in, or I might say, you pick one, I'll pick one, or again, this is totally customizable. Now, I've provided an instruction guide to identify what each of these different images or animals are representative as far as body movements, but we have a butterfly, mad cat, swimming seal or the Superman position, roly-poly, kangaroo, flamingo, snake, bear walk, crab walk, duck walk, ostrich walk, inchworm, and frog jumps. So these are all corresponding to different body movements. And again, there's an instruction guide to highlight what those are, but it just gets the child up moving and their body warmed up for more seated activities to follow. After we've done these activities, we move into let's warm up the fingers. So it might be a precursor to some handwriting work, or it might just be to target fine motor skills. Now, I have also provided in the instruction guide a link to accessing a free materials checklist. And this will help you to initially, as you're beginning to plan sessions, know what materials the child might have available in the home that you can use to list here on this fine motor slide worksheet. So the child would be able to pick two. And again, this is where it saves you a tremendous amount of time by having items already commonly found around the home that the child would have access to. And again, you can customize this to be sure that it aligns with what the child has access to. You can ask the child to plan or prepare for having two of these fine motor activities for the session. So when they start the session, hopefully they have a little container with some of these materials available, or they've already pre-identified which ones they would like to do. And they're usually pretty excited about that. They're like, I'll ask them, which one did you pick today? And they'll excitedly show me the materials and we'll do the activities. And again, the activities can be a lot of fun. You can time it. How many drops of water can you dip on or drip down onto a coin, and guess how many drops of water the coin's going to hold. And of course, that's going to be working on those fine motor and some finger strengthening of the intrinsic muscles. The nuts and bolts, if that's something that's available, and timing how quickly they can put them on, take them off, and so forth. Make it kind of a race if you have the materials on your side and you can do it, and see if it's a race or with a caregiver. Sometimes I love to take the tongs, and again, you can certainly use everyday items. So if you haven't found the TelehealthShare YouTube channel, there's some wonderful videos on using items at home series. And so how to make your own tongs with just popsicle sticks and other everyday items, a rubber band and so forth. Or you could take a straw and fold it over and turn it into tongs. Oftentimes I'll use paper towels and have the child tear strips of the paper towel and then crumple it up into the little balls, and then we'll use the straw folded over to pick those up. So again, these are things that are necessarily therapeutic materials that have to be purchased or anything of that nature. It's really identifying things that the child's going to have around the home that you can turn into some really fun, fine motor activities. This is my little tennis buddy. So if they happen to have a tennis ball, you can create a little tennis buddy. And again, this is a lot of fun to do where the child is doing a race. So you're working on some palm to finger translation, finger to palm translation, depending on if they're picking up the coins or putting them into the mouth of the tennis buddy. And you're going to get some great work with the hand as well as some great fine motor work over with the opposite hand. That's some good bilateral work. So you can customize this particular slide for the session around materials that the child's going to have access to. And once you create it, you're good to go. From there, you can just each week have either the child pick one, you pick one, or the child picks two, and they have those materials ready to go. So you're not having to plan, prepare, communicate with the caregiver, make sure you have these items. The child is getting to choose, and that way they're already prepared and have the materials ready for the session, we hope. Okay, and then moving into handwriting. So if that's a goal that you're working on with a child, what I like to do with this slide deck, and again, I customize it, and then I update it as I go through the session to prepare for the next week. So I know right when I open up the slide deck, the following session, I have already updated it to where I know what page of the workbook we're in. And you guys that are working with a lot of kids know that this is a helpful strategy and that you, it really kind of makes it quick at your fingertips to see what page did you leave off. Because if you're working with so many different kids, so many different workbooks, having visual cues to help you know where to start back up is really helpful. So what I do is put a picture of the workbook on the slide, so I know which workbook the child's in right off the bat without having to go back through my notes or my documentation and so forth. And then where there's a highlighted X, I just update the page that we are going to pick back up on the next section. So we'll do some handwriting activities during the session and then move on to perhaps some visual perception activities. One of my very favorite websites is I Can Learn, and you can see there on the screen there are a lot of different activities working on various visual perceptual skills and tracking. And a strategy that I like to do as well is I might highlight a particular skill area that I want to target and change the color of the font. And that way, when I save the PowerPoint and I open it the next week, I know, okay, that triggers me to know that I want to work on form constancy next week. Or perhaps I want to work on sequential memory next week as well. So I'll just change the font color, save the PowerPoint, and when I reopen it the following week, I know what skill area that I had planned to target based on the performance of the previous session. The next slide, and again, this is fully customizable to align with the therapy session that you want to work on with the child. And ideally, the more aspects you have incorporated in the images, the more customizable it is with less prep work needed on your side. So it might be that you're working with the child on jumping jacks or jumping rope or kicking a ball or catching a ball or even hopscotch, which I've done in a home with some materials on the floor and the child engaging in that activity. So again, it might be that you have these different images that align with the child's goals and you say, let's work on new skills. Do we want to do jumping jacks first or do you want to work on catching the ball? Another great activity I love to do with kiddos is with the various size ball tossing, catching. If it's a very basic skill of just being able to catch the ball and then adding in a clap and catch, and then ultimately working up to 2, 3, 4 claps and so forth. Obviously, with the qualifier to be very careful with using a ball in a home, working with the caregiver to make sure that the child's safe and that the ball's not going to knock into the computer or do any damage to anything in the immediate environment, because certainly that's a consideration. But again, you can have the images, have some autonomy for the child to select which one to go first, which skills that we're going to be targeting during this session, based on some pre-described ones that you've identified as being therapeutic. Then again, this is a customizable for you to pick what else you might want to incorporate in the therapy session. So if you're working on life skills, money management, online activities and things that you want specifically to incorporate to align with the child's goals, perhaps emotional regulation, and you're using zones of regulation program and so forth, you can customize this to target that particular area of the goal that you're working on. So I did highlight on this particular slide, TelehealthShare has a wonderful bundle that's free of different activities, online websites that target these different areas outlined. So there's an infographic for each of these different areas, and you can identify specific ones that are going to target the skills you want to work on, and then explore those resources that might then be incorporated into your session and on these slides. And the last thing that I like to do is have the very last activity I have planned for the session be the free choice activity. And again, ideally, if you can make this very broad in the sense of this particular type of slide, you can have the child pick an activity that you didn't get to during the other slides that they might want to incorporate as their free choice activity, or it might be a pre-described list of online games that are therapeutic. I always make sure that the free choice activity is therapeutic and makes sense that I'm engaging with the child for the activity. So it's not just a fun activity that has no direct alignment with our therapy goals, but it gives them autonomy to look forward to one of their most favorite things to do at the end of the session within a predefined construct of therapeutic activities. And I use this as a motivator. So during the session, if they're kind of slow to get into an activity, I'll say, let's get moving and get this activity, working on this activity, get it completed, because we want to save time for that free choice activity. So I use that as a motivator during the session to kind of keep them moving and engaged, and that way that they have time for that free choice activity. And ever so often, if the session, we just run out of time, I try to work with the caregiver, and hopefully immediately following our time together, they can finish up and do the free choice activity, which is oftentimes a fun therapeutic online game that the child really enjoys. So that's something that I've used to help me know what I'm doing during the session, where I left off from the previous session, again, by creating ways in which the child selects one or two activities. It takes a lot of the planning off of you as the therapist, and that communication piece of needing to coordinate with the caregiver to get materials ready ahead of time. Ideally, with some of these, they might have a small container with a few of these items that they can quickly access. And if they plan the activity ahead of time, thinking about what they want to do, and it's fun and they get excited about that, then they'll have those materials ready for the session. And as I mentioned, I do have an instruction guide that goes along with this this PowerPoint deck, outlining the different slides, how I use them, and the different animal activities on slide 2 and so forth, as well as links to lots of free resources that you might be able to then use to further customize the slides. I hope you found this overview of the PowerPoint and my process to save time and still provide engaging, fun therapy sessions to be helpful. If you've created a product that you're using in your sessions, please reach out to us at TelehealthShare. We would love to partner with you to help sell your products on the TelehealthShare online marketplace. You can go to the website, www.telehealthshare.com, and just click the tab Seller Info, and you can get all of the information needed to see how to start selling your products on the TelehealthShare online marketplace.